Judy Waters, the mayor of Rossville.
Thank you, Terry. Guys, I'm really a fish out of water here today. I do live in Rossville. The reason I wanted to come was to tell you that Doug has developed successfully much of the same concept that he's talking to you about. We have just passed a planned development that looks very similar to this, that's going to change the whole scape of what Rossville looks like. It's going to be, like he said, it's going to be similar. It's going to be a 5 to 10 to 20 year project, but we're excited about it. Doug has already built several communities in Rossville. The concepts he's talked about with the small homes and the, not multi-family, but smaller homes in a community, and they're wonderful. People are buying them at the speed of light. I saw a report today that Rossville is 20th in the state in terms of value of homes. 20th. We're only like 1,500 people, and our home values are that level. So it's good for you. It'll be great for y'all. Doug's a quality guy. He does great homes, and I hope that you'll consider this. Thank you.
What's the average value of your homes in Rossville?
There are 4 homes for sale in Rossville right now, and they're all over $650,000. They sell on the market about 20 minutes, literally.
Vice Mayor Ken Sutton from Oakland.
Can everybody hear me without the mic?
No.
You can't? Okay. Basically why I come is just to tell you the dilemma that I'm facing as I have a vote on this next Thursday. It's on the agenda, okay? So what you look at when you try to make a decision, what I look at is what's the totality of the circumstances. And so what I think most people that contact me on email about this project, and I've had a lot of people contact me. Some are for, some are against. Most don't live in Oakland. My heart resides in rural Fayette County. That's where I'm from, a rural area, from Ripley, Tennessee. Retired from the Highway Patrol and picked Oakland to live because I like rural. But my obligation is to the citizens of Oakland. That's who I work for, that's who elected me, so I've got to try to make a decision that's best for them. And I think the biggest misconception about this project is that you can fight it and stop it, and there'll be horses running on it from now on. Doug touched on it earlier. This property is already zoned. It's zoned, when you look at Highway 64, almost halfway down, all the way across, is commercial. It's B2. Anything but industrial. From bars to liquor stores to movie theaters to car lots to whatever you want to put on it. It is non-negotiable. The only reason we're here today is this plan was offered as a planned development. Anytime a planned development is issued, it goes into a negotiation factor. So they have to say, hey, Oakland, we don't want 180 acres of commercial. We want to downgrade and have 40 acres of commercial and make the rest of it R1 PD. And so this is actually a downgrade project. And so what I want the people to know is that if this don't pass in Oakland Thursday night, when it comes back up, Oakland may not have any control over what goes there, how it looks, and when it happens. When it's a planned development, it is controlled and negotiated from the time it starts until the time of completion. So this board that approves it today, it's not going to be the last board that reviews this plan. There'll be the next board in 4 years, the next one in 8 years. So it could be several people that has a responsibility of making sure that this goes as planned and by the covenants and whatever the other word you said. But I just want y'all to know that the only reason this can be negotiated is because it was introduced as a planned development. And if it gets turned down, they have the ability to sell this land to anybody they want, and then they can do anything that it's zoned for without any negotiation or any control or any HOAs that keeps up with that property. And so that's something you need to keep in mind. The other thing you need to keep in mind is this. The state does not allow Oakland to set a minimum standard on housing. Okay? So if somebody wanted to build 1,000 square foot houses all over that property right there, that's zoned for R1, they're allowed to do that. Oakland also don't have any regulations that allows them to tell you what that house can be constructed of or what the appearance of that house is. The only thing that allows you to do that is the planned development that's introduced. We try to push everybody that brings a development into a planned development. Now, that has some advantages for them as well. But I just want y'all to know that it's not as easy as saying, hey, we don't want this in our community. We like the rural. Vote no. That's what I get. Vote no. Well, it's not going to go away. There's not going to be horses on it. If somebody has a piece of property that they're ready to get rid of, it's going to be developed. And so that's what I wanted y'all to know. And I will do my best to make a decision for what's best for the citizens of Oakland and not negatively affect our rural environment. But this is a good plan that is very nice, and you didn't get to see the whole thing. I wish he'd have went through, and I didn't know if he had it, and just shows what the architecture looks like on these houses and the commercial spaces, because it's important that you see that. I brought a book and tried to get some people to look. Some people don't even want to see it. Some people did look at it. But this is a beautiful community. And as long as it's a planned development, like they've introduced it, it can be negotiated. And it's also an HOA. So even on the multi-use stuff, those people, if they were renting apartment space above that commercial space, they would still have to be a member of that HOA. And if they were doing things at their home that the HOA didn't approve of and what they didn't allow, then that HOA could take them to court and force them out and fine them. That happens at these things. So you've got a plan that's controlling things introduced that can be negotiated from the start to finish, or you can roll the dice and take a chance on somebody developing it as is. And that's what I wanted people to be aware of. Thank you.
I don't want to overlook anyone. Mayor Brown, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Sutton said everything.
Okay.
And Ms. Hughes back.
Mayor Taylor, do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, sir. I think this is a city of Oakland issue. We're definitely going to affect things in the county, but I think they're going to have a lot of good information going forward. Trust them.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody has questions, please come to the center aisle and come to the microphone. And what I'll ask you to do is to state your name and where you live. You can say Hickory with, Oakland, or Collierville, or wherever. I believe that mic is working. Jake, I think that's number 3. Yes.
Hi, my name is Debbie Mallett. I live in Oakland, and I'm fairly new to Oakland. I've been here about 18 months. I just don't understand. I love the development and the way you've explained it, but why are y'all saying that it's zone commercial and there's nothing else you can do about it if this was negated? And they said, I don't understand that this is in writing, that it's commercial no matter what happens.
Absolutely. When I first started coming into Fayette County and as a professional, now I've been coming into Fayette County since I was knee-high to a grasshopper because our family's farm is up on District 14, Journeyman. There was no zoning. There was no subdivision regulations, which meant that anyone could do anything they wanted on any piece of property. And you see it. You drive around the areas and you see where a store used to be, a business used to be, and that's what was allowed. And so there was a point, and it was roughly about 30 years ago, when the county hired a planner. And the planner came in and they said, we've got to figure out a way to control what our growth is going to look like in the future. We don't want it to be haphazard. So they brought in a professional, and the professors took a lot of time, and they looked at the entire county, and they said where the areas that commercial should be, where the areas that residential should be, where the areas that should be remain for a long period of time. And so they started designating zonings to these areas. And the zoning for this property that was designated without the family having anything to do with it was way back then, and the county zoned that all commercial. And I'm sure the reason why is because it's close to the county line. They knew that people were gonna be moving out. It was right at the center, and the beginning of the community. It's the front door in many ways of Fayette County. The majority of the people that travel into Fayette County come through this corridor. And so they thought this was the perfect place for us to be able to put a lot of commercial. And why does a community want commercial? Commercial is sales tax dollars. So a community, for the most part, and it's different in every community, Oakland, from what I understand, about 25% of its revenue, budget of $6-7 million, 25% of that revenue comes from property taxes. All of the rest of that, the bulk of that, now there's some state aid, road funds and things of that nature that are on the smaller significant side, but the bulk of that 75%, outside of what we pay in property taxes, are sales taxes. That's why commercial is important, because a community cannot survive alone and provide the services that we want, the police protection and the fire protection and all of those various aspects on property tax alone. So it was zoned by the county a long time ago, and when Oakland came and annexed this area, when you annex a property, you adopt the zoning that's already there, because you can't go to a property owner and say, well, I was gonna let you do this yesterday, but I'm gonna change it today. It is a right that the landowners have. So once they establish that, it is a right that runs with the land. So if one landowner sells it to another landowner, that person has the exact same rights under what that zoning is. Did that answer your question okay? Thank you.
Next,
Yes.
if you'll come forward to the mic, please.
My name is Mark Ogg, and I live in Eads. And our property basically backs up to the meat packing plant. It's real close.
Yes, sir.
So this is very near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely.
Two things that come to mind that I don't know if it's gone through. I didn't hear anything said about kids or schools or anything like that. It's just gonna be a 55 plus through the whole area. And I just don't know how that's gonna end up working in a situation that's a full, let's go walk to the park, but we've gotta go get grandma 60 miles away. You know, it just doesn't, you're gonna have to explain that maybe.
I'll be happy to, thank you.
And one other thing, I didn't hear anything about, we live on an aquifer. We're a very special place because of that.
Yes.
We're gonna be siphoning off liquid that is gonna keep us alive, or it's gonna be, you know, water.
Yes.
So that's the second question.
And if you'll remain there in case I don't answer it, you can make certain that I do answer it. So 55 and older. There are two ways to do that. One is 55 restricted, and the other one is 55 targeted. 55 restricted is where the federal government comes in and gives you the ability to be prejudiced against people that are under 55. Of course, that's not really true at the end of the day. The federal government comes in and gives you that ability to create these 55 and older communities, but they also require you to have a certain number of people under 55. I know that sounds odd, that it's a 55 and older community, but a percentage of them have to be under 55. Because they're saying that you can be prejudiced based on age, but only up to a certain degree. But there's a lot of issues that are associated to that. For instance, if you own the house and you pass away and your children want to move in, well, then they're not allowed to. It also restricts you significantly when you're wanting to sell your home. Because if you do happen to be the 40-year-old that lives there and you need to sell, well, you have a very narrow market. So it really doesn't always appreciate values. It sounds good. But a 55 targeted community means that it is designed specifically for 55 and older. The homes are built in such a manner. The interior of the homes, the finishing of the homes, the architectural interior spaces. Examples that we've been working with during this architecture is that all the doors are 3 open. So if you ever did end up being in a wheelchair, that it's easy accessible through your home. That the bathrooms are wheelchair accessible. That the showers don't have a threshold so that you can walk or wheel straight directly into it. So that there are blocking in all the walls that are appropriate for where you would have grab bars and things of that nature. The kitchens are a little different because they have drawers versus having cabinets. So if you are having a hard time opening a cabinet and trying to get down low to it, you can pull a drawer open. And there's so many things. There's billions of dollars being invested today in aging in place. And because I think after COVID, a lot of people realize the last place that they want to be is a nursing home. So they're looking at, and we're looking at, and we're working with builders to offer these products. But the community is for all ages. So yes, there are portions of it, and there are homes specifically designed for it, but it's not designed for one specific area. Let me get my point working again. It's not like that this area right here is going to be for the younger individuals with children, and that this area over here is where the 55 and older are. It's a matter of when you choose to buy your house, what are you buying as it relates to it. So a younger family may want the 2-story, and we want 1-stories and 2-stories. We just don't want a blank landscape of the same homes, the size of the homes. They may have a 2-story that has 4 bedrooms, and 3 of the bedrooms are upstairs for their younger children, and they be adjacent to a park. The other side of the park may very well be 4 or 5 that are 55 and older that are designing to say, well, the type of home that I want on here is an aging in place house. So my front porch faces their front porch. They have the ability to see the children across the street or across the park playing. It's an important factor, I'm sorry. No street. So it's a wide diversity within the same neighborhood. So we're not trying to segregate them out. We're wanting to invite them all. Now, as it relates to the schools, I would love for us to be able to have a school. We're not allowed to through the charter aspect at this point. There's lots of things that are happening to solve some of our school issues. Our mayor in Oakland is a retired school superintendent, and he has looked at many different opportunities as it relates to online education. They're building a big, beautiful park. The big, beautiful park can be utilized for young children to go and have social interaction, or clubs, or sports, or be involved in those things, even if they did get educated at home. We feel like, and there's a big push now with the millennials, to work from home. The homes are designed as though they have small offices, so it's not like we remember in the past where you walk in the front door, and to the right is where the study was, and the pretty desk is there, and the bookcase behind it, no one ever uses it because it looks pretty. These are work centers that are in the home, that give you that ability in fresh light, that you can go into this area, have a little more privacy, and that's where you work. We don't really have much to say as it relates to the school system currently. Now, it may be a time that in the future, that Oakland does want to have a municipal school system. Yes, sir.
There's a certain amount of people that are gonna have kids.
Yes.
And they're gonna come into the community. There's a life cycle, I think it's 7.5 years.
It is.
If you take that and go around our community, you're gonna do it 1.5 times, you're gonna move up to another level. We're basically gonna have, I think, how would I call it? A homeschool community.
Well, there's still public
what we're
education.
shooting for?
No, there is public education. And quite frankly, as long as I've been in Fayette County, I've seen the education system improve significantly in the last few years. Oakland may have its own municipal school district at some point in the future when there's a lot of growth associated with that. We'd love to be able to offer a charter school here, but that doesn't really fit today with the legislature giving us the opportunity to do that. And I'm a big proponent of a lot of the bills that have been passed that the money follows with the child. So if they choose to not be in public education and they choose to go to a faith-based school, private school, that they have the opportunity to go and those state funds continue to go with them. But what we're talking about, and you brought up a really good point, yes, the family may grow and they may age, but we want them to be able to stay in the same community where their friends are at, and where their church is at, and where their doctors are at. And just because they move doesn't mean that they have to move somewhere completely different. They can move within the development with the different diversity of housing that's within that development. And see, I've already forgotten what your second question was.
It was about the aquifer.
The aquifer, thank you. You're absolutely correct. We have the best water in the world. The University of Memphis has a groundwater institute. Every year for, and I can't remember how long it is, but it's been a long time, the world, the countries, regions of countries and states send their water to be analyzed, and Memphis is number one every time. And there's a lot on the internet that relates to that. So our aquifer system was created through the Mississippi embankment. There are 3 layers that are down there. It's about 6 foot of clay in between each one. And those were developed from ice ages. So as the glaciers retracted, that's the sand layer that was left. And that sand layer has a recharge zone. The western recharge zone is on the other side of Crowley's Ridge. The eastern is around Selmer. And so the Groundwater Institute has run tests to determine that when rainfall happens way far to the east of us and way far to the west of us, so you think of it as like a bowl, that's the Mississippi embankment. Then all of that water that hits over here, groundwater that starts to seep down into those sand layers that are at the surface, because you go out around Selmer and try to dig a pond, and it won't hold water, because it's sucking the water down into those aquifer systems. They say it takes over 1,000 years from when rainfall falls around Selmer or on the other side of Crowley's Ridge before it comes underneath Memphis. That's the aquifer system, and that's why our water is so pure. And if you've ever driven a drill well, which you may have at your home, you realize that 180 to 280 foot with powdery white sand, that's what's left over. That's what's left over from that glacier. And we've had 3 of those with these large clay layers in between them. So each aquifer is protected from the next aquifer because of this impervious surface, the clay layer that's between them. So this community, and whether or not it's developed as a traditional suburban development, or whether or not it's developed in this style, and this is only going to be one of many, many that are coming over the next decade or 2. This is we're anticipating about a 20-year plan. It'll take about 20 years to build this, and then another 35 years for it to fully mature with what we're proposing as the plantings and the landscapes and the things of that nature. All of us are going to be drawn, and Oakland's water system, the reason Oakland started as a water system is there was an individual who lived on Highway 64, Main Street at the time, that went through Oakland. His name was John Trotter. And he was at work one day, his wife was at home, his young child was out playing in the yard and fell in the cistern. And the water was down low, and his wife reached and did everything that she could to be able to pull that child out. She couldn't, and he drowned. And he went to Lieutenant Governor Wilder, and he said this should never happen again, ever happen again. So Lieutenant Wilder, with his pull as a state senator, he went out and found grants, and he had to run all the way from Oakland, all the way down Harold Road, all the way up to almost in Arlington. And if you drive out there now, you'll see a water tower. That water tower balanced with the water tower in Oakland that created a water system. He had to go that far to get enough users to qualify for the grant. John Trotter spent the rest of his life operating that water plant. He turned it over to Harvey Ellis and trained Harvey Ellis. Harvey Ellis was there 18 years, 20 years, and now he's retired. He's turned that over to Blake Covert. We have a good water supply system. We have donated just to the east of this site and to the north, the land for Oakland to make future improvements. So if they want to put in what they were proposing, and quite frankly, I think the majority of the design is done, it's just a matter of when they pull the trigger, is a groundwater storage tank versus an elevated water storage tank. So instead of having it elevated and the pressure coming down, that creates the pressure in the system. This is actually done with pumps. Germantown, for instance, has one water tower. It's all groundwater tanks, and they use that to pump to create our pressure, and they control pressure better that way. So we need to be very careful about what's done with the aquifer system. But it's more important for us to watch our neighbors to the east and the west, because that's actually where anything can occur in the water that 1,000 years from now is going to affect the people that live here today. Did I answer your question, okay? Did I answer it too long? Because most of the people out here are saying, I can see the look and they're saying, too much, Doug.
Joanne, this lady's been very patiently waiting. You can have my seat. Come on down, ma'am. Y'all can come down front and just stand behind.
And Terry, there were a few people that said that they really didn't want to come up front, but they had written notes for
Okay.
questions. So if anyone has those, if you'll raise your hand, maybe we can get someone volunteer to come get those. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Linda Lane. I live on Fair Oaks Golf Course. Been
Yes.
here 18 years.
Yes.
Born and raised in Memphis. Do not want Memphis anymore.
Totally
I
understand.
have lived many other cities in the country, and I have seen this concept. I saw it 20 years ago in Texas, South Lake Town Center.
Yes.
It was very successful. It was so successful that traffic's a nightmare.
Correct.
I work in Memphis and come down 64 quite a lot.
Yes.
And I don't want 64 to turn out to be Germantown Parkway or Poplar. So what kind of traffic studies have been done? What improvements are gonna happen so that all this growth you are talking about is accommodated and we're not sitting at that light for 10 minutes at a stretch?
Absolutely. So, a lot of studies have been taking place. The traffic and the congestion won't be just related to this project, it's gonna be related to all projects within the area. So we're not looking at it as a particular project, we're looking at what the growth will be down the corridor. There's corridor plans that are being done now. As it relates to this project and all the conversations with TDET so far, and we still have a lot more to do. So in other words, as we start to identify the various different businesses and things of that nature, one business may not generate a lot of traffic where another business does generate a lot of traffic. So there'll be changes that have to occur over time. And that's what we were talking about, of always coming back before the mayor board of aldermen. It's negotiable, and many, for 20 years, there's gonna be many boards that have an opportunity to have a say-so as it relates to that. But to answer your question very directly, is this is not an automobile-centric design. It's a people-centric
But
design.
they're gonna own automobiles.
Yes, they
They're gonna
most
come
certainly
and
will.
go.
Well,
They're not
we-
gonna walk to everything they need to do.
No, not at all. But they will walk to some, which is fewer times that they're getting in their car and they're driving out onto the highway.
Yes.
So
I agree.
traditional development standards would be that all of this is where the commercial is, and back here is where all the homes are at. And everything that they need to do, they're gonna drive up, get on the highway, and come back in. Worse, as you can see, we've got one point of access here, another point of access here, another point of access here, and then we have a light at this point. This is a collector road. This collector road is to continue west. It will come down to about where Salmon's Road is today, and then it'll come back out onto Highway 64. A collector road is to make it easier for people to follow this path to come back to another controlled light than to continue to come out onto the highway. So if you think about what we talked about earlier, if all of this was developed commercial, and they all have driveways that are coming out onto the highway, and we could just, on your way home tonight, you'll see an awful lot of examples of what that looks like. That is what's slowing down traffic, and it is people that are trying to get out into the traffic. What we've done with the traffic engineers is to bring them up to 196. So these people have an opportunity to come here and go to a controlled lot, not sit here and try to get out to the middle of traffic and slow it down as it comes down. And I'm not gonna say that we have it perfect at this point right now. As we go a little further along and we start to see how the businesses develop, then we're gonna have to make changes. There'll be turn lanes, this is a divided highway. There'll be turn lanes that'll be built in there, and there may be times that they have to be extended based on the traffic load at that time. So this type of design cuts down on the amount of traffic, but quite frankly, we're gonna have a lot of traffic as our community continues to grow. And here's the sad part, TDOT rarely comes and is proactive, and they see your growth rate, and then they come and expand or make other road improvements. They wait until everyone is screaming and tired of sitting in the parking lot before they ever come out and make an improvement, and that's just the reality. But TDOT also only spends money as they collect it off of the wheel tax and the gas tax. They don't borrow money to make these improvements. And that's why they're looking at it and saying, we see the pressure, but until it reaches a certain point, we can't actually invest in making those improvements. And we may can work with our state legislator to change that, to where we can get them to start being more proactive, but it's not the way it is today. And we're gonna have more traffic. There's just no way in the world that we're gonna get away from it. The growth is coming. It's either gonna be in this manner or another manner. I think another manner is gonna be worse on our traffic. I would like this to be an example that we start to utilize, and this become a frontage road that then connects and continues. In fact, that is already on the major road plan. The new planner has incorporated this into Oakland. This actually could come all the way over, and there's multiple points. This is a collector as well. So in other words, these people will wanna focus into this point. These people will wanna focus over and come to the light. It's to break it up with the traffic patterns, so that they're not all trying to exit or enter at the same place. Did that?
Second question
Yes.
is, you mentioned Rossville, you've got an example of this down in Rossville.
Yes.
Is it just the residential part, or it incorporates the multi-use and the retail and all that? Is it all?
Rossville
Can we
has a-
go down there and see an actual working example of how this is going to look and how people interact?
The residential component, yes. The commercial component, no. Rossville has a population of 1,000 today, so it's 1,300. 1,300. We do real well to keep the Wolf River Cafe busy, but we're not at a rooftop to be able to support a commercial yet. But what we have planned is something very similar to this, but an even larger area, a significantly larger area for where the highway and the neighborhood commercial is, because we're anticipating that growth coming from Germantown and Collierville. That wave I talked about earlier, when it comes, this town now, working with their professionals and their planners, which is one of the planners that we actually incorporated in our charrettes relative to this, and working with Ed Corton, the new planner that's in Oakland, which is the best thing that Oakland's ever had. The talent that this man has had, brought in from all around his experience, that's what's leading to a lot of these type of things.
too much, you be wanting to raise.
Sorry about that. That bad planner did. In Oakland, in Rossville, you can go and see this type of concept.
What is the name of it, where off of 57 is it?
It's called the Village of Lafayette Station, because Rossville's original name was Lafayette Station. If you go down 194 from your home,
Yep.
if you'll just go all the way down and follow it into Rossville, when you get in 57, turn left, and you'll see it on your left. And you'll see the first phase is complete, the second phase is 40% complete, the third phase is about to have asphalt put down on it. But you'll get a feel, but it's also, it's not as comprehensive as this in many ways. And the reason I say that was the early aspect, and going through that planning commission, we had a very odd piece of property that we were dealing with. So we had a Dollar General that was about to go in across the street, and we had to jump in and buy that property real quick, and so we did something similar as a TND. But it's not the perfect example of this, because its intent was to prevent the Dollar General and the gas station from being in the middle of the community where it didn't belong. But like much of our commercial property along Highway 64, it was already zoned. So unless you have someone who's willing to invest in the community and buy that and convert it to residential, well, they would, I mean, literally, they were gonna sign the contract, and then they were just gonna go pull a building permit, and we were gonna be stuck with a Dollar General right at the entrance to this development. So, as it relates to that example, this will be significantly better. As it relates to the planning that we've done for the new project called the Highlands, and if you wanna stop by, you're gonna kill me, City Hall, and take a look at those plans, there are big sheets that show that plan, and it shows detail as it relates to the commercial, the multifamily, the assisted living, the neighborhood commercial, the town square, and how all of that interrelates with the golf cart paths and this same type of development, the same.
The Highlands is where?
The Highlands is not constructed yet, we're just
Yeah, I
starting.
know, but we were talking about putting it where?
In Rossville.
relation- Oh,
In Rossville.
okay.
But you can look at that plan, and then you can drive down and see that property and see kind of the comparisons. But Lafayette Station's probably the smallest, easiest example for you to drive through and look at it. And stop and talk to the neighbors. Stop and talk to the people that are out on the front porches. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. Joanne was next. I apologize.
My son recently tried to buy a house for an investment, and he was gonna rent it out to someone.
Yes.
Will there be something in the deed? Because he was told he couldn't buy this property because there was something in the deed that prohibited rental property. And will there be something in this deed that prohibits investors from buying houses and then renting them out?
Great question, and quite frankly, we need help figuring that out. And all the communities right now are struggling to figure that out. What our attorney team is telling us is that that's not enforceable. You can put a description, I mean, you can put a deed restriction that says.
Tom Minor.
No, not Tom. Our team of attorneys, but they've been working with Tom. But here's a thought process that I've been going through, and some of the things that we've come to is individually we can't do it because we're not allowed to. There's too many things that the federal government has come in under the Fair Housing Act of 1968 that prohibits us from being able to do that, meaning that it's not enforceable. Just like we could put a restriction that says everyone has to have blonde hair. This, in reality, the path that we're on, or at least our team is working on with Tom and other attorneys, is to say, if an investor group comes in and they buy 10 homes, 20 homes, keep in mind we have hundreds of homes in this area that have been bought by investors, that is a business. So if they've come into a community and they have bought 10 homes, then they are then by ordinance declared a business and have to register with a business license that gives us the ability to have some controls over them. We can then, we're hoping, tax their homes at a business rate, which is 40% for taxes versus the 25% that we're currently. But what that does is it then gives the town the ability to set some restrictions under their ordinances related to a business, and that's how we're leaning towards being able to control this. But every community across America is struggling with this right now. Every community. And I'll also say this, it's a catch-22. I've got a family now in one of our developments whose son is been accepted to school in New York. And she doesn't want him to go by himself, and she wants to go with him. And so she's decided, and he's agreed, for them to go up there for 2 years. But she doesn't want to lose her home, and she wants to move back because her father lives about 6 homes down. So she has asked me, can I rent my house for 2 years and then come back and move back into it? And the answer was yes. We also have had a number of families that hit hard times, and they lost their job or whatever it may be, and they were having a difficult time. Well, they didn't want to lose their house. They were having a hard time making their payments. I'm not saying any names, but a lot in this community that we worked with back from 2008 to about 2015. Their option was either to rent their house to someone that could afford it, that was moving from an even larger home, and then them go and get another home, or they let it go back to the bank. And if it had gone back to the bank, then the bank would have sold it at a discounted value, and it would have hurt everyone's property values around there. So we worked with a lot of families. So there are circumstances that it should be okay for a person to be able to rent their home. Maybe it's temporary, maybe it's something along those lines, but what we've got to identify the differences between the individual rights of someone and the rights of a company or corporation making it a business investment. And I think that's where we've got to draw the line and determine how we can legally do that. But there's a lot of people working on it, smart than I am. I'm the dumbest one in the world. I surround myself with smart people. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Donna Robbins, and I live off 196.
Yes.
And my concern is the apartment situation. We own rental property, and we're good landlords with our rental properties, but there's a lot of landlords that aren't good.
True.
And they don't take care of their properties.
True.
So my question to you is there any way to put a covenant in place where these apartments would be owner-occupied properties instead of rental properties?
That is something that we most certainly have been discussing. And so here's the need, as we talked about earlier. People that are coming to the area that are needing something to rent. That's not owner-occupied per se. That means they have a temporary reason for a year or two to be in a unit. Jake, could you flip through to the last page? You're still listening to me? There we go. So, Many people think of apartments as what we described earlier, concrete metal stairs in the middle on either side. These are not anything like this. This is the mixed-use component, where these are renderings from a project that is actually down in Madison, Alabama. All around this are cotton fields. So they have moved out to these areas, and they realize that they have so much growth according to their plan that's been built down there. And I forgot to say something earlier. You take the 3 plants that we described earlier and add them together, and they're still not the size of this Ford plant. And the Ford plant is in phase 1. Phase 2 is double the size of this plant within 10 years. This is the largest automobile manufacturing plant in North America. The largest automobile manufacturing plant in North America. People are coming. There's a need for rental, and if we don't find a place for them, investors are gonna be buying. Or worse, what's happening in other communities is they're going in and building single-family subdivisions because they won't let them put them together in a building. And they're building the cheapest product that they can. Because as Vice Mayor Sutton said, they can't control that. And they'll build them in groups of 400 and 500 and rent every one of them out. So it's an apartment complex that could have been contained down to a 12 or 14 acre area, 20 acre area, that's now occupying 100 acres with all of these homes being rented, where they're not being maintained as well, and you're dealing with a corporation that's trying to be a good landlord. But this is similar to what we're talking about. These have porches that face out, and I can get into all the infinite detail as it relates to the distances that we have from the road so that the ground floors actually have a front yard. We have porches that face the community. They're not enclosed into the community. On the interior of them, the ground floors actually have garages. So it's not even a car that's parked in the parking lot. They have garages that are beneath it. They're very expensive. These are probably 900 square foot. If you were to go that small, would be $2,400 a month. And the people that are moving here can afford that. This is kind of the retail component that's on the bottom of it. So this can be where your Miss Cordelia's, small grocery area is. This could be where a fresh market is at. This could be where your architect's office is that's helping you with your plans on your custom home. This can be any one of those businesses, and then those above them. Some of these units, the way it's designed, is the owner lives in this unit and this is their business that's beneath it. So there is a mixture of owner-occupied per se as it relates to also those individuals that have the ability to lease those. So as you can see, balconies on the outside, different heights, not Walt Disney World. There are examples of that around where they put these fake parapets and things of that nature. So if you're directly in front of it and you're looking at it, it looks pretty. And then you walk a little bit to the side and it's like that thing's only a foot wide. It's just made to kind of look pretty. And it's face. I call that Walt Disney World architecture. These are the actual structures that have been constructed. And this is an example of one of the things that we're also working on is within the plan development, a sign ordinance that allows us to get back to more historic signs, not big bright signs that are on the building, but the more porcelain signs that are on the side that feels more like an older community, like a town square. So when we talk about these mixed-use units, this is the type of architecture that we're talking about. We're not talking about the traditional apartment size. This, and can you go back to the second slide, Jake? I'm not sure where I'm looking where Jake is. Where is Jake?
He's up there.
There you are, okay, sorry. Those buildings that we were just looking at, that's what these are here. You see, this is a corridor that comes into the town/village square. This is a corridor that comes into the village square. This is the corridor that comes into the village square. That is why we have these to where they can have retail on the bottom floor and the residential above it, so that these individuals can come out, walk, and come straight over to this square or participate in these stores. They're facing outwards. The inside actually is as beautiful as the outside, if you ask me, but the inside doesn't have porches. The outside has the porches, and so these are set back with a landscape screen. These actually do have overstory canopy trees in front of it, so we've given enough distance for those to actually have the overstory canopy trees. I didn't see where you ran off to. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Doug. You're making a very good presentation. I'm Dennis Clark. I live in Oakland. And I have a question. I think we may have met a number of years ago, and we were discussing something called Agenda 21. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. Well, this is what this reminds me of, and as long as it's done by a developer and the landowner that is not benefiting in some way through the federal government,
True.
I think it's probably a good project. But I'm just scared that somehow or another the government is involved in this. Is there any way that you could confirm that? That's a no question, I guess.
No, the government is not. And are you saying yes or no because you don't want me to elaborate because I run too long?
Well, I know that the guy behind me is a lawyer, so.
Okay. I can talk about Agenda 21 and what the UN is trying to do to us, and that is awful. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Hal Rams. I live out by the airport. And
Yes.
First thing I want to just make a quick comment. I think they're all wrong on the theory about the aquifers. My pond leaks, and that's where it's all coming from. All right. On lot-to-lot separation, are their fences required, optional, or prohibited?
Prohibited for the most part, because this is an inclusive neighborhood. So this is, the way we've done this, and you can go down and look at examples. We have picket fences and different styles of picket fences that you can choose from. Those are in the rear of the home. So there is an area that you can let your dog loose if you wanted to in the rear of your home, but it's not privacy fences. In between the homes, if two homeowners have the ability, or not have the ability, decide, because a lot of these have side porches as well, and what that does is it allows a lot more light into the interior of the home. If two happen to face one another, then they can build a 6-foot brick, in most cases, barrier between the two that cuts down on visibility and sight between the two residences. A lot of them, we try to work with the architects so that those that do have the interior courtyard that face to one side, that they're all facing in the same direction. And most of that has to do with the direction of the light, because we're looking for them
It's
to have
conditionally
shade.
optional.
Conditionally optional.
Okay. Next thing, so let's say you go out and have a bunch of family members, maybe some of them from California, and all want them to come and stay with you for Christmas. Where do their cars park?
First of all, behind every home, you have at least 2 to 3 parking spaces. That's behind your garage.
Okay,
And
you got 5
garage
people
spaces. And then we have scattered all throughout the project guest parking spaces. You don't see a lot of them because they're covered with trees. Those are landscaped. There are guest parking spaces all throughout this, not one for every lot, because that's way too many parking spaces that are out there. And the few events that occur where people do have that, we do have enough parking spaces, but we want them to have to walk a short distance to get to those homes.
All right, now you got somebody who is thinking of moving in, and they do woodworking, and in their garage, they're gonna have a table saw and some other stuff, and they move it out to the driveway and do their hobby stuff there, or maybe work on cars. What's the tolerance level for noise and stuff?
We have noise ordinance within our covenants and restrictions. But you brought up another good point. Like I said, there's so many components to this. Y'all would all be asleep and still be here tomorrow and wake up and hear me talking.
We should just talk.
If we were to get there, briefly. This area where self-storage is, the very west end of this, see this area right here? I'm gonna call it what everyone else is calling it, is man caves.
Is,
Man caves. These are 25 by 25 units. They have a garage door on it. We have electricity that's in there. We have plumbing only for being able to have a bathroom. This is very popular and they're building them all over the place now. And it's in particular developments like this. Because as you downsize, you may want to get away from your spouse. And so what we've created is an opportunity for man caves. So men go down here and they rent these spaces, and that's where they do their woodworking. That's where they work on their cars, their motorcycle, they hang out, they put furniture in there, a big screen TV. And that is another portion of dealing with people that are downsizing, so that They don't have a wood shop in their backyard any longer, but we give them the opportunity to have one.
Okay, so you can do it, but not at home.
If you're in your garage and you're very quiet, I'm not sure anyone's gonna say.
Have you ever heard
Just
of
turn your
driving a
neighbors.
table saw?
Your neighbors are probably gonna call us and you're gonna be cited for,
Yeah.
noise violation.
Final question, what about sewage? You got sewage plant and arranged, all set up?
Yes, there was a meeting just a few weeks ago in Oakland as it related to the improvements that they're making to their sewer facility. As it relates today, there's a lot of rumors that are out there that they're out of sewer. It's not true. Are they running to a capacity? Yes. Can they handle everything that they currently have planned to grow? Yes. Can they handle all the homes that are under construction? Yes. Vacant lots, subdivision that have approved, and subdivisions that have gone through planning. But they also recognize that they have a lot of growth that's coming. So they're investing already. They've already done this back. They've already started. The engineering is, I'm gonna say at this point, maybe 70–80% complete. And they're expanding the current wastewater treatment plant to a total of 3 million gallons a day. An average home uses about 250 gallons a day. And I will also add this, when people say, well, the city has to pay for that and we're getting the benefit for it, the wastewater treatment plant that Oakland's currently using today was paid for by a developer, up front, $1.8 million, and it was built. The improvements that are being made now are the sewer tap fees that we pay as developers. So every time we develop a lot, we write a check to the town, and that town uses that money to put into a fund or to offset any financing that they've done to make these improvements. So Oakland's way ahead of everybody. All these other municipalities that are around us, they're trying to figure out a way to do this. Oakland was much more advanced, except
thank you.
Rossville. Judy is gonna slap me. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sheila and I live in East. And I was wanting to, because at the last meeting you never did say how many actual multi-family / apartments are there? Because the way I figured it, from what I saw posted, there's 1,617 residential, and out of that, 915 single, so that means there's 702 apartments.
No, that also includes the independent assisted living facilities. It also includes any of the units, and I didn't cover this, but y'all are gonna tell me to shut up. Where the town square is and the buildings, Jake, could you go to the second from the last picture? Not that one, but the one before. Okay. Town square. This is the neighborhood type commercial. Now these are old. Our intent is to make them look old, but I'm never gonna make it look like it's 100 years old when they want. But we can change the bricks and the architecture slightly from building to building. These units that are above it, those can be office, there's multiple uses for those. They can be offices, they can be condos, they can be lofts. Each one of these buildings, and we want a mixture of 1-story and 2-story and 3-story that were permitted within this area. It also includes all of those as potential units. So in other words, half of them may be offices and there may be 100 that are around the town square and the buildings that are creating the town square, but they may only end up being 15 or 20 of them, depending on the other uses that go along. And as it relates to the mixed use, I can't really answer that because until you get into the actual concept of how many 1-bedrooms or 2-bedrooms or 3 bedrooms, you can't really tell the number of units associated to it.
So potentially at least 500 apartments, would you say?
I don't think we'd ever get anywhere close to that.
You don't?
No, I don't think we'd get anywhere close to that. If we got somewhere, I'd probably say, by the time you weighed out the retail on the bottom floor, used an average of the majority being 2 to 3 bedrooms, which is, I think, families that are relocating here that are looking to buy and needing to rent. We might be in the 2 to 275 range at the end of the day, less than the number of homes that are already owned by investors in our community, less than that.
Okay, and then you said a minute ago in passing about the HOA that even these rental properties that the people renting would have to pay into the HOA. So that would be part of what, like a deed restriction then? Okay.
The HOA is created as a corporation. It's a corporation that is governing the entire project. And when I say that, its sole purpose is for the beautification and the creation of amenities for the community. So that means the entrance features, lighting on the entrance features, flowers being planted in the spring and those in the fall, to keep up with the walking trails, to keep up with the park benches, to keep up with the gazebos with swings that are close to where the mailboxes are. That is what everyone is sharing in a cost, and you brought up a good thing, because I'm gonna add an aspect to it. People are gonna start getting up and walking away again. In this circumstance, not everyone has to pay the same HOA due, but everyone has to pay the minimum. This includes the businesses. This includes the drugstore. This includes the office building. This includes every person that has anything on this property has to pay towards the beautification of the entire property. Everything. But let's say, sorry, Jake, could you go back to the second slide again? Let's say that in this area right here, that these owners decide that they all, for the most part, the majority have grandchildren, and they'd like to have a killer playground. I mean, a killer playground. And they're the ones that are requesting that. And they're saying that we'd like to have this phenomenal playground. And that playground is gonna cost $500,000. Playgrounds are not inexpensive these days, especially in making them safe. They can come to this HOA board, and they can say, we would like to have this playground, and we recognize we're requesting this, and we're gonna benefit the greatest from it. We're not closing it off to the rest of the community, because that's public park space. But we're wanting this. So they'll come to us, we'll bring in an architect, they'll put it together, they'll price that, they'll look at the landscaping and the extra sidewalks, and they'll pull together a cost. And then we'll say, for us to finance this over a period of X number of years, your individual HOAs will have to go up $17. Does everyone here agree to pay an additional $17? Now that means they're paying $17 more per month than everyone else, because they're specifically asking for something that benefits them more than the rest of the community, and the answer can be yes. And it would be by a supermajority of the people that are requesting. Because there's always gonna be a few that don't want that, but we're trying to cater to the supermajority in each one of these groups. Just like this group could say that they'd like to pay for Bill Davis to come and stock this pond. And if that pond is directly in front of that, and they all decide to pay $10 more a month to maintain those beautiful fish, they have the ability to do that. So it's not a one-size-fits-all across the board.
Also, as far as like the parking, because there's subdivisions like that, like if you go down Macon Road, it just looks like parking lots. And I'm sure those subdivisions started out, no parking was allowed in the alley, but it happens. So instead of making that part of the HOA, because it's just so hard a lot of times to get HOA covenants enforced, why could that not just be a city or Oakland, basically just like you see in Memphis where there's things, no parking, or you get towed, or you get ticketed and towed? Why can that not be on all these alleys? Because I figure after 10 years from now, all that will probably just slowly, people start breaking it slowly, won't be enforced, and in 10 years it's gonna look like a parking lot. So
That is a legitimate fear from things that you've seen in the past.
right.
But those haven't been my projects in the past. Here's the way I want to say that. As we mentioned earlier, these alleys are public roads.
Right.
And
So that's what I said, so that
the
like the
police
police.
department can
Right.
actually monitor that. It does not have to be the HOA as it relates to that, but the HOA can also additionally be involved with that.
Right.
For a fine that goes to the HOA, not just a citation that goes to the city.
Oakland could enforce that, the police
Yes,
could
they're
enforce it
public
in tow.
streets.
And so that is not just a HOA restriction of no parking, it would be actually the city saying it.
Correct.
So it
Absolutely.
could be enforced both ways.
Yes, and that brings up another aspect, that if the community, for instance, said that I'm concerned that there are more people that are coming out here, they're starting to come to our park, and we'd like to have a better police presence. So it's not just a matter of calling. As an HOA, they can all agree to pay $7 more a month and go and work with the city of Oakland to say, can you hire or have 2 of your part-time officers that are officers of the law, that have the ability to wear their uniforms, come, and we pay the rest of their salary for them to hang out here 7 hours out of the day. That's the benefit of self-governance, which is what the HOA allows you to do for the benefit of the community. And it's not the bully police.
One last thing, and I'm sitting down, you talked about earlier there's phases, could you go into the different?
Yes, actually, first phase would start in this area here. we would start to work and migrate our way down into this area. We have to get enough rooftops so that we can start to attract the businesses and the commercial. The limited amount of commercial that we have, as we have the rooftops that are starting to come in, means that if we have this restaurant site, we have a restaurant site. So it's not just a matter of picking an Applebee's. You can be picking an Arlene Jensen. So whoever is wanting to be there, because there's a limited amount, instead of a massive, vast amount of commercial that they have to choose from, the limited amount gives the family, the developer, the opportunity to interview and determine which of these businesses are most beneficial for the community. Yes, sir.
Name's Curtis Helms, I live off 196. You answered one of my questions, in fact, you just got through answering it. The other one is, what is the minimum size lot and the minimum size house, and what would those costs be?
I'm gonna scare you when I say there's no minimum.
Don't minimum?
There is by us.
Yeah, I understand.
So cottages, right now, the cottages that we're building are around 1,800 square feet and above. We did a grouping of 4 that were around 1,500 square foot, and they went like gangbusters, and they were mostly all widows or widowers. One family actually was an elderly couple. They downsized into it, and those sold for, well, they're selling between $4 and $4.20. If you go down and look at the development, we have a lake in the back. We have a big 10-foot wide sidewalk. The cottages face that sidewalk, and then we have a big lake that they're there. All their front porches are facing to the north, so they're in the shade the entire time. Those little cottages are selling for $400 and above, and you can look and see the floor plans and so forth.
And the larger homes would, of course, be on larger lots.
There is no limit to the larger. Yes, the larger lots will allow for larger homes, or the larger lots will allow for a smaller home that has more yards. We have, in these type of developments, swimming pools. Now, don't get me wrong, these aren't the big swimming pools that people have in their backyards today. These are plunge pools. So you still have the ability to have a place that you're laying out and still get into the water. But these lots are still big enough to put swimming pools on. But you can get a bigger lot and then put a smaller home to have more area. And in fact, some of the lots have trees that are on them. And they're already a bigger lot because we're preserving that mature tree and leaving only a small area where the home can be constructed.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you for your question, sir. Yes, sir.
While this gentleman's coming down, we're gonna be closing here shortly, so if you have a question, please get in line now.
Lionel Barron, I live in Eads.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for your time. It's been very informative. This past summer was pretty dry.
Very.
Question is this a one-off, or is this the front door to a climate change situation? So now,
I actually have an answer. Y'all can laugh.
No, I know you got it.
is there a hydrology study that's public access regarding this entire development?
Not that we've done independently as it relates to this. There is a lot at the University of Memphis at that Groundwater Institute. Bedrock here is about 2,300 feet down. To answer your question, the trade winds coming in from the Pacific create what we call El Nino and La Nina weather patterns. La Nina weather patterns occur every 7 to 9 years. That's when you see when beef gets really inexpensive, it's because they can't afford to feed them and they start to slaughter them at a greater rate because they can't keep all of the grasses. It's about 7 to 9 year patterns. In between, we